see, I am a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Heart Gold and Soul Silver here in the States. I had purposely locked up myself outside of all media and the internet, aside for school purposes. This meant no 4chan, no /v/, no Bulbapedia. As I was busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on launch date. After my school year ended, however, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I'd replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago, my mom threw it away because I told her the save went and died, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I have left is my Game Boy Color. As such, I sent out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it's the only Pokemon game left that they have for Game Boy Color. $10, fairly cheap despite it being GameStop. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's when things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you read this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the cart was errored or something, so I turned it off and on. The same thing happened. I tried pressing A and start over and over, and all of the buttons. Eventually the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous save file, which was odd. I was expecting all of these carts to have been wiped out by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen to continue option to see what the previous guy did anyway. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had 999 hours and 59 minutes put into the game, with all 16 badges and 999,999 Pokédollars and all 251 Pokemon on his Pokédex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back then. I checked his Pokemon to see what team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played the game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyway. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word to be spelled out L-E-A-V-E, leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this was before there were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with 1 HP left and only 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that, despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appears to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but couldn't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There were also no wild Pokemon to be found. Finally, I managed to find a ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black, and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill, as I recognized that melody I heard to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the ruins of Alph, where the unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather a dark room, and would need flash. But before I took care of that, I immediately checked my Pokegear to change the radio to something more pleasant. But it turns out that there was no radio card, or even a phone or time cards. There was only a map card which, Gold, was just walking in the midst of black. I recall that Cyndaquil had Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying hurry, use Flash, or anything like that. The room just became lit, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path leading south. The ladder I used to go either up or down was not here at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made, until I finally made it to the inn, which there appeared to be a sign. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now." Suddenly I was asked to answer yes or no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes as I did not know what I was being asked, and the screen went black again, making a ladder climb sound. The unknown radio music stopped, and in a few seconds it was replaced with the not as creepy Pokeflute radio music. I was in another dark room. Suddenly, it said that Hurry had fainted, which was odd since I recalled that there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly, and suddenly, he was no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon were there, but instead all were replaced with level 10 unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the unknown. My team of unknowns spelled H-E-D-I-E-D. He died. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appears to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were gray bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside of that room appears to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game that some sadistic person sold to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile again, only to find the sprite of Gold was missing his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but seems rather sad and empty, in a way that I do not know how to describe. For some reason, it also said now that he has 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation, but instead of flying up though, my character spun downwards slowly as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold is colored differently now. Instead of the usual red color he dons, he appears completely white now, including his skin. It's as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games placed into a colored background with the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile and now, while now as white as his overworld sprite, he lost his legs and has what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says he has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me, as this change of number seems to represent something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contains 5 unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknown are this time level 15, and spelled out D Y I N G, dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there's only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It only has 1 attack. Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything is apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long, slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happens when I try to speak to them. I kept going north until eventually the pillar finally appears chopped off, with the transparent red in the spot. I went up to red without even pressing A. I was suddenly engaged in a battle. The music starts again, which sounds like the unknown radio music again, but played backwards. Gold's battle back sprite matches his front one, with the bloody eyes, white skin, lack of arms, while Red's sprite was the same as before in gold silver crystal except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he has no name, and both of us only have one Pokemon each. Which is weird, as I swear I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with half a sprite for the back sprite also. Shiny noise and animation was different, as the sound it made sounded like multiple screech attacks, used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he is level 255, and his sprite seems sad and has tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi has only one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could even use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle continued without me. Also note that there were no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level boost, and his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happens, as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a whole lot of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack there in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted, except in the text. It said Celebi has died. Pikachu used one more attack. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards it said Pikachu has died, with the slow fade-out animation. Apparently I was the winner, as transparent red sprite showed up and said, at that point, I just freaked out, as the transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point, and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to Gold's sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time, the only thing remains of him is a head, with transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing the black void in his eyes. It now stated that he now has 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which when spelled out read N O M O R E. No more. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason, I felt like there was something there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe finally I get to play this game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic person must have done something. I walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what was waiting down there. Note, I said walked, as while the background was moving. Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so, just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower-level room of my house. Everything appears normal, except Mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in his room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, that door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just walked straight through it into a void. I continued moving south to see what was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy, as when I entered the void, the outline on Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually, I reached a white area and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said, "Goodbye, forever," and vanished. As that happened, it said, "?????, use nightmare." Which at that point, I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back into that small hollowed-out room surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least, I say I was back there, as there's no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. I checked my trainer profile, with absolutely no gold sprite left. It said I had 0 badges and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spat out a phrase that I dared to read. I M D E A D. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was then covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out exactly what the room was, when the final text said, "Rest in peace." That room was a big grave surrounded by other graves. Gold must be dead. He must have died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. A young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generations. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened. At which, I finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folk tales and legends, but the second generation has shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink about what that rigged game had taught me.